have a great conversation with Axcent Networks. Kenny's going to come up here and introduce the subject and the objective of their session. But I just want to thank Kenny and David. Axcent Networks has really been a stalwart, a great contributor to all of our shows ever since I've been here. And so I appreciate them. They're good people, a great company with great services, focusing on integrity. And with that, Kenny, I'd love for you to come up and talk about what you are going to discuss today.
Thank you for all the kind words, Chip. I'd like to say a thank you to Encompass for providing this forum for us to get up and talk about integrity and data integrity and how it matters in the telecom industry. Our subject today for this Lunch and Learn is Integrity Matters, the keys to maintaining accurate data. So I'm Kenny Dutton, Vice President of Operations at Axcent Networks. So we're going to just it's an open forum. David has some slides that we're going to go through and kind of walk through some different parts of why we think data matters and how it matters. So I'd like to introduce David Wuensch as well as Greg Payne. David is our Vice President of Sales and Business Development, and Greg is our Senior Account Manager handling basically all of our accounts.
Thank you, Kenny. Well, so as he said, we're going to talk about data integrity today. And so we're going to break this up into 3 different parts. The first part of the discussion, we're going to really spend on why are you here besides to get a free lunch? And then we're going to really talk about, and Greg's going to lead the discussion there in what do you do what do you do to maintain data integrity? And then we're going to continue again on the how type of thing. So, there's a couple of things I thought we'd touch on to start with. Having had a career in sales, the Pareto principle is one of those things that many of us lean on from time to time. And, we recognize that sometimes 80% of our revenue comes from 20% of our customers. The one thing I would say about data integrity, 80% is probably not a good number. Having 80% data integrity is not the best number you want along the way. But you could apply a part of the Pareto principle because, that 20% that's not accurate is probably going to cause 80% of your work. Fair? Now, it's, I guess, a discussion with respect to why are you here, what's important. I went to one of our new, maybe sometime 80% accurate source, ChatGPT. What does ChatGPT say are the five main reasons that data integrity matters for telecom people? ChatGPT thinks, number 1, billing accuracy. Number 2, operational efficiency. Number 3, service quality. Number 4, regulatory compliance. And number 5, customer trust. Now, similar to many other ChatGPT queries and whatever, there's a lot of good information in there, and some of it may not fit exactly right. But I'd like to hear from you guys. What is it, what are your biggest concerns with respect to ChatGPT? So, what's this table here say?
Biggest concern with ChatGPT?
No, the biggest candidates, that's a good question. No, data integrity.
We're in the regulatory compliance business, and so it has to be accurate.
Inaccurate reporting of data can create a huge problem. 499, 477 data, BDC data. But then there's also this level of, we have employees that would get obsessed with 100% accuracy, and it slows down the process so that it's no longer efficient. So trying to find that balance.
It's interesting.
Okay, when is it good enough? How fast do you need to be? What steps can you take to make sure it's got data integrity, but we're operating efficiently? That's always the balance.
That's a very good point. While I may have said 80% is probably not good enough, I mean, we have worked with some clients where we needed to get to 99.5% accuracy. Some other clients in certain projects, 95% was the target, because after that you were dealing with parts of pennies. And so that's a good point, that it does matter, that area. What about this table? What do you got? Oh, all right. Who else has a, why are we here? Besides a free lunch. Okay. Well, at Axcent Networks, the things that we frequently see, I mean, that billing comment is really a pretty good one. But certainly, the last thing carriers want to be doing is paying for circuits they're not using. And that can be one of the biggest challenges with respect to data integrity. Another one is, with data integrity problems, sometimes we have struggles in speed to quote accuracy, which can affect speed to revenue, which is one of our biggest targets. That's one of the things we've seen. The third area that we've seen would be basically in the tech support world. I mean, the speed to troubleshoot. With, if you don't have the right data, sometimes that can slow down the process. A fourth area we have seen is people in today's world needing to do IP reclamation. And I mean, that's another form of data integrity, being able to do that, or NNI cleanup. I don't know, did any of those trigger anything with anybody that? All right. Anybody have anything else they'd like to add to that list? All right. Well, so today what we want to end up doing is walk through a process to be able to maintain data integrity. Greg helps shepherd a lot of that process in our company along the way. And so I'm going to let Greg walk through this three-part strategy where we're going to talk about the discovery and reconciliation phase, an optimize or post-reconciliation and handoff package phase, and then continual improvement. So, Greg?
Thank you. What I want you to walk away with is I think this: when we talk to different companies about their data, there's very few that think their data is in good shape, meaning you have 100% matches between what's in the network and what's in your OSS BSS, or what's in billing, or what's in accounts receivable. So everybody knows they have a problem, but not everyone understands or knows what to do about it. What we want to really give you is three big steps that you can take to make things better. And we want to encourage you that it is possible and it is worth the time and effort. It really makes things a lot better. So here's the three big things that we do. We enter a discovery reconciliation phase, first and foremost. And again, some of these go kind of concurrent. Go back a slide, David, if you don't mind. We go through an optimization phase where we look to make things better, and then we look at an improvement process. And really we're trying to attack three questions. We're trying to say, how do we clean up this mess in the first one? How did we get this mess in the first place in the second step? And the third one is, how do we keep from getting into a mess again? Because the last thing you want to do if you invest time and effort into a data integrity project is you don't want to end up 3 months down the road, 6 months, a year later with the same problems again. If you didn't fix root causes, then really what are you doing? Who has time for that? So let's go ahead, David. Let's go through the first part, discovery and reconciliation. I'll tell you kind of what we do or what we think is important. Here's what we do. First thing, we scope out kind of what the goal is for the project, whether it's a finance goal, a cost recovery goal, just a data integrity, network integrity goal, and we want to understand what your key data points are and what the key UDAs, the user-defined attributes, what other data do you need along with circuit IDs and billing numbers and addresses and so forth. And then we want to understand what the data sources are. Where are the sources for the data? And really what that's about is determining what the primary sources are and what other secondary or archive sources that you might have. And we do that because we want to understand what the source of truth is. If we're looking for a circuit ID, what's the best source for that circuit ID? Circuit IDs might live in 8 different systems in your ecosystem. What's the one that we're looking at for the truth? And if that one's not good, what's a secondary source that we can maybe rely on? So we're identifying data sources. We want to determine the database or record or the reliable source of truth. And once we kind of understand that architecture, and we understand how the data flows, what we can count on and what we can't, then we need to prepare the data to run an analysis, and that's where we go through data cleansing. And what that means is your data lives in different systems. So for example, I'll use circuit IDs again. Circuit IDs might live in different systems, but they may be formatted differently. And so what we'll do is we'll strip the circuit IDs just to their basic characters so that we can compare them across systems. And we'll reconcile addresses so that they all look the same. So 101 South Main Street looks the same, so we can compare addresses or site IDs or whatever it is. Bandwidth is another good one. We want 10 gig to look the same, and we want to be able to compare like for like. So we'll cleanse the data so that we can compare like for like across the different systems. Then finally, after all that work, that's all the good work to run an initial baseline. And this is beyond, that data cleansing is really where things get difficult. That's beyond something you can do in Excel. That's where you really need to spend a lot of time and effort. When you run that initial baseline, then you know, all right, what is my match rate? If I'm trying to match circuits to billing, is my match rate 40%, 90%, 60%? You know, then you know, and we'll have a good clear match number. Those are good, you put those to one side. Where the work is in the next 2 buckets, which is in a probable match. We run a probable match algorithm to say that, hey, these 2 data sources, they don't exactly match maybe on circuit ID, but the addresses and the billing number and the CR number, they all line up, and we've got something that needs investigation.
So Greg, when we're at the identified baseline point of view, we frequently have people come to us and tell us they've got about a 85% match. Does that ring home with others? But when we actually do the work with them, you know what it's closer to? The reverse, 58%. I mean, so a lot of times in going through and really digging into the problem, frequently when we're working with clients, that's the kind of numbers that we end up seeing. Is sometimes what people seem to think is the number, we have, after digging into it, finding out the number really isn't 85%. It's looks more like 58%. But anyway, but then, you know, you want to continue with where you go from there?
Yeah, so our goals here are really to look at data from an automated perspective through scripts and databases at this point. We run the initial analysis, you have your match rate, your probable or possible match bucket. Those are things that need investigation or maybe it's just cleanup. And then there's another bucket of no matches where data doesn't match across systems at all. And those may be circuits that are disconnected but billing. They may be bad data. You might have phone number 9999999. Right, or 1234 Main Street, things that you know are just wrong, that just needs to be cleansed from the system. So once we have that, that's where the good work begins, where we, and you, if you're taking on this project, combine your data science folks, your data analysts with your knowledgeable telco people to look at that bucket, review the baseline, look at that bucket of probable matches and try to figure out why they're not matching. Is there a disconnect in the way the data flows? Is there data that can be corrected quickly to make a match? Are there things that need to be removed from your systems that can be cleaned out? You know, that's part of that. Incorporate additional logic to improve results. As we find those buckets of maybe a particular vendor that does things a different way, and you figure those out, then you add that algorithm or you add that logic to your automated process, you run your match again, and then your match rate should go up incrementally. So you have your initial match rate, you do your good work and incrementally add to your logic to build your match rate up, making corrections along the way, you know, correcting your logic, accounting for maybe things that are outside normal processes, and you keep working to improve it. Run your new baseline and you repeat as long as it's necessary and effective. And I think David alluded to it earlier. There may become a point for you where there's a lot of things hanging out there, but they're not worth the cost to go after, and so you just kind of live with them. Some companies will live at 90 or 95. For some applications, you want 100%, right?
So I guess before we move on, any questions on discovery and qualification or anything anybody want to ask about with respect to that at this point? But I think some things to take a look at when you do this process, and one of the things that we have found is the importance of combining the work of the data scientist and the software with telecom engineers. I mean, Axcent Networks' DNA is really telecom network engineers. We just happen to become data integrity experts. In our particular solution and the solution that we recommend, it's one that's really more about an iterative process between using the software and actually doing the manual work. And Kenny has a very technical term for this process. It's called munging the data.
My favorite term.
Say again?
My favorite term.
Anyway, and I think, that's one of those powers is, software can get you a certain amount and you can continue to iterate software if you want. We have found a lot of power that if you have telecom engineers actually examining and looking at it, the manual piece is where you uncover other secrets to where when you rerun the software, you can get closer to the accuracy. Anything else you want to add on this slide, Greg?
No, that just reminds me, folks we've talked to, a lot of companies want a magic tool where you can just plug your data in and it spits out all the results and fixes everything, or there's groups out there that maybe promise that sort of thing, and it just, our environment doesn't work like that. You've got to put in the work. So David's right, you have to combine that work of your data science and your software and different algorithms with knowledgeable telecom savvy resources who can go close gaps for you. You can't avoid the hard work.
The idea being it's just not a computer software solution, it's actually a telecom network solution with software power.
Right, our world is too dynamic, and the tools we use are too dynamic, and processes are too dynamic for a one-size-fits-all magic tool. So there's not magic out there. The secret is hard work, with some expertise. While you're doing that, to get to our second point, optimization, when we do these projects, one of the things we caution folks are, again, like I said earlier, we don't want to go in, fix your data, and then leave you with more problems. We want to be asking the question, how do we get in this mess in the first place? And once we understand that, then we can put a handoff package together to make some improvements or suggest some improvements or work with a partner to make improvements. And usually it comes down to a couple things. Sometimes the issues are a catastrophic event or, kind of one-time events. A merger and acquisition, is going to be a catastrophic event that's going to introduce new data into your system from sources unknown, and you're going to have to deal with it one time. Or maybe there's a technology change or a tools migration. You move from one BSS or OSS software to another. And that migration doesn't go well. Those are like one-time catastrophic events. And if that's the case, you want to understand them, so if you go through them again, then you can do them better the next time, but they're not things that you live with over and over again. The other issues are kind of the process issues. They're about data flow. Do we have inherent gaps in our process that are causing these problems? In other words, are our problems self-inflicted? And a lot of us have those problems because all of us move faster than we want to sometimes, and we got to get things done, and we don't always have time to sit and plan through processes or work through them. And so there you want to understand, all right, what is going wrong and what can we improve? And our point here is about cross-functional collaborations, but to me it's about handoffs. The last point's the big one, improving handoffs, because there's two kinds of handoffs. One handoff's your data handoff. We have amazing tools now where we collect data on the front end. Are we efficiently passing that data down to wherever it needs to go through tools and processes so that everybody can see it and it stays consistent along the way? Or has it become a game of telephone where it starts out with one thing and then it kind of morphs and changes incrementally along the way? We can't have a telephone in our data. We want that data handoff to be smooth. Is it a data issue? And I say that because now there's so many tools and processes in place where we don't have to swivel chair data anymore, where it doesn't come into a person, I type it into one tool, and then I have to turn around and open another application and type it in again, and then hand it off to someone else who types it into 3 more systems. There's good tools available that can go grab that data or push that data downstream through your process to whoever needs to see it. And so you have to ask the question, are you leveraging those tools and those processes effectively? And they could be as simple as small, like RPAs, little automation that the end user can do for incremental changes, to big API calls or to big data pushes, depending on your need for the data. How does it need to be real time? Or can you do big batches in the evening or whatever? But are you handing off that data correctly? When the data isn't automatically being pushed, when human intervention is involved, are those processes going well? Is there a good feedback loop? If the process isn't working, does it kick back to someone to get it right? You had a great point about, boy, the obsession with data can slow the work down, and you got to manage both, right? There's a great quote from John Wooden, who was a legendary basketball coach at UCLA, won 10 national championships in men's basketball in 12 years. And he says, if you don't have time to do it right, when are you going to have time to do it again? And that principle should be the governing principle for this part, right? If we don't have time to do it right, well, man, you can't complain about having to do it again. You want to get it right, but you want to be efficient. You want to be as efficient as possible. You want to improve the handoffs. You want to eliminate redundant processes. You want to eliminate swivel chair. We always recommend standardizing formats for data. Anytime in your systems, it can be a pick list. A drop down instead of open manual entry is great. Anytime you can push data from one system to another, that's great. That gets your naming, your addresses consistent. It gets your bandwidth consistent, your circuit ID formats consistent, and that solves a lot of problems. It makes it so much easier to report on. And then you want to do your process documentation. You want to understand your data flows, do your swim lanes and flow charts so you understand it, because that helps you when new processes come along. And I know we all deal with that, right? We have our processes today, but what we're doing 3 months from now, 6 months from now may be different. And so you have to be nimble to build those new processes and implement them well. And if you document your current ones, then it's easier to build on those for your templates for your new processes. So,
What questions do you have on the part 2 of the process that Greg covered? Go ahead.
A question I talked to somebody earlier about was like, man, there's so many, I was talking with a gentleman earlier and he said there's so many tools out there that you can leverage and use for reporting or for different parts of your process. You don't even know what to pick. I read an article years ago. It was a marketing article. It was called The Tyranny of Mustard. And the point of the article was, man, there used to be a day when you would go into the store and you saw 2 kinds of yellow mustard and then maybe the brown stuff. But now you walk into the store and there's 27 different kinds of mustard. And there's 40 different types of toothpaste. And there's 18 different types of ketchups. And it's overwhelming sometimes. You don't know what to pick and you go with what you know. There's so many tools out there. Sometimes you need a good guide to help you figure out which mustard is right for you, to overcome that kind of paralysis of looking at, just a shelf full of all these different types and you don't know what the differences are, right? There are tools out there that you can use that are going to help you, and the tool I use and the tool you use may be different, but there's folks out there that can help you kind of understand that and get away from that paralysis of just staring at the shelf and not knowing what to do. The last part of our process is continual improvement, and this is answering the question: how do we keep from getting in, or how do we know we're not getting into a mess again? This is like the Roomba. It can't clean the big messes, but it's going around the room and cleaning up the little messes. It's like the little dog under your table. You build good processes in your data integrity phase to identify problems and fix problems. You can leverage those now then to spit out health checks for you and show you if the processes you've implemented and the changes you made, if they're going well. You should see continual improvement, or you shouldn't see your gap in your unmatched growing. You can leverage those processes you built. If you introduce a new process, is it working? Are we seeing mismatches in a particular area with our new process? You're always asking those questions about our data. Is the data that we're passing down, is it correct? Does it look the same across all our systems to everybody who needs to see it? Is it complete? Are we dropping things along the way as that data gets passed on? Is the data getting corrupted along the way? Are the people aligned? Are your groups working together? And are you asking them to do things that are applicable to them and not having them do extra work that's just wasting their time when there's a better way to do it? But you always want that continual improvement goal for the ongoing health of your network and your systems. So those are our 3 big steps, our 3 big processes in our data integrity world.
All right. So what questions do you have with respect to data integrity and a process to go do that? There's a
So as I listen, right now I'm reading a book by Stephen Covey called The Speed of Trust. And basically it gets into, do you have high competence and high character? And if you invest in getting all of those elements that make up those 2 traits of an organization or an individual, then even though you may invest more on the front end, then everything moves much faster, and it constantly moves faster. So what would your applications be as you work through your three-part process? Where do you see companies then move fast and faster because they've established the trust of their data, the accuracy of their data, and the measurement and metrics of their data?
I think one thing when companies do this, when you trust your data, then you can move forward with confidence. And then what you don't have, like practically on one end, is you don't have folks on the sales side having to manage the project implementation. They can sell, they can kind of see the progression, but they don't have to get in the middle of it. I was talking with another gentleman earlier, and he was saying, yeah, one of the challenges is you have folks entering notes maybe into one of your systems, but maybe the implementation side or the sales side doesn't have access to the notes. And so basically they have to call somebody to read the note that they typed in, which was supposed to be available to everybody. Right? Things flow smoothly. Everybody has the same access to information, knows the status of projects, and they can move forward.
One of the things that hits me when Chip asked that question with respect that, I mean, there's customers that have paid us to clean up what's fallen out of automation that ain't working. Why is it not working? Because the data wasn't right. Right? So, I mean, if we want to, to make automation work, data integrity is kind of important. In our effort to automate as much as we can. So I think that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, the last thing you said too, when you mentioned that book, what I thought of was the last thing I wrote in my notes was culture. Because it's easy to think about this process as a data process or a technical process. We're just updating processes and we're building API calls and whatever, but really you're trying to establish a culture in your workforce. And it's got to be a culture that cares about data, and cares about the cleanliness of the process. And it's got to be, you have to have a culture where someone can raise their hand and say, yeah, something's not working, this handoff isn't working. And you have to have a culture where you get good alignment from your upstream and downstream partners to take that and say, okay, yeah, you're right. Let's do something about it. And it's not a fist fight, or it's not a source of conflict within your organization or with your partners, right? You're trying to change culture on top of all these processes. If you don't change the culture, then you're going to continue to struggle.
Well, and I think another thing in general that we end up seeing is not that anybody will say data integrity is not important, but in the battle of important versus urgent, somehow or another data integrity projects slip and slip and slip. And I'm going to talk about that in a second a little bit, but any other questions on what Greg's covered so far?
Just a quick comment based on Chip. I'm glad you brought that up, that book, because I've been misquoting that. Somebody told me about it. I've been calling it the efficiency of trust, and I looked it up. I'm like, I don't see efficiency of trust, speed of trust. And so thank you for correcting that. And the culture in an organization, I've seen organizations where the culture, the conflict between departments is so bad that, and so called the slowness of mistrust, where they want to use the data to make the other department look bad. I mean, if you're not working together toward this goal, I mean, man, it's just not gonna, it's just gonna come to a grinding halt. The data is not gonna be good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough environment to be in, right? And if you've been with a company or you worked with partners that don't feel that way, that share data, or they have the common end goal, then you can have those good open conversations and folks are open to making changes or doing what's best, right? Ultimately trying to do what's best for everybody.
All right, any other questions? Well, here's our summary slide, but I guess the next question, the topic is, how do people go about implementing the process and take care of it and be efficient? So what we see frequently is there are those carriers who choose to turn around and build dedicated resources to attack this problem. And some carriers can afford to do that, some can't, but one of the solutions is building a dedicated team to attack it. We see other carriers who end up building non-dedicated teams to do that. And of course, there's some carriers who hire companies like Axcent Networks to come in and clean up the data. And sometimes in those situations, what end up happening is that we'll clean up the data, they'll learn from what we're doing, and then they'll use non-dedicated resources to maintain it. And then there's others who will choose to have us help them maintain it along the way. And then there's those who just haven't got to it yet along the way. I'm just curious from the audience as far as any experiences they've seen in data integrity projects in any of those buckets and how they worked, and we'd love for you to share. Anybody have any feedback? Now, we may be a little biased, but we think for many of the Encompass member companies that you're better off having somebody help you through it, and even consider having them maintain it along the way. Take us off the table, but it's just one of those issues that is important enough to get done, but gets delayed over and over again because of urgent issues. And being able to dedicate, an outsourced solution to come in and help take care of that is one of the solutions to get that done. I don't know, Greg, what else would you like to add?
No, I was just thinking, there's a lot of very smart people in the room, and there's a lot of smart people in your companies who can do some of this stuff, and can you empower them with the time to do it? And there's an element of expertise to some of it too. Some of this is beyond simple SQL query and beyond Excel VLOOKUP, but if you make it a priority, someone can help you jumpstart it, and you can do a lot of it yourself. And again, the main encouragement we want to give you is this can be done. It's worth investing in. It's worth taking the time to do it, and you'll be glad you did it. But it does cost something up front in terms of time and effort.
Yeah, we're certainly proponents of telecom data integrity across the board, whether you choose to have dedicated resources or non-dedicated resources or hire companies like us. But it's an important issue to help you, especially in this world of automation, as we head in that direction. But we want to take care of customers. Having the right data, like we said, it helps you keep from paying for circuits you're not using or having other billing discrepancies. It's going to help you, with respect to speed to quote and quote accuracies. It's going to help you as far as speed to troubleshooting. And then other areas where we've seen it help was in things like IP reclamation and NNI cleanup. But I don't know, you guys have anything else you want to say before we close this session out?
No, I think I always think about, you did a survey at one of these shows, I can't remember which one it was, and the survey was asking, what is your most important goal? And everybody's goal was to get to revenue faster. And getting to revenue faster is by and large a problem that creates data integrity issues, right? So if we are rushing to get to revenue, which everybody's going to do, we know that. If we could slow that down, we're not going to. What do you do on the front end? If you get your data right on the front end, then speed to revenue is even faster. It's trust, right? You trust in your data, you're getting to your revenue that much quicker. So I think I always go back to that. David, like I said, did a survey, and that was our top answer from the audience, was that they wanted to get to revenue as quickly as possible. That's everybody's number one goal.
You have good data too, then you own your data, and then you can leverage some of the good tools out there like Power BI or Tableau. If you have clean data, you can utilize those tools, and you can have some good self-service reporting to see whatever you want to see on the fly. If your data is kind of disparate and a mess, then those tools really aren't going to be much good to you. They're going to be like watercolors versus a high definition photograph. But there's a lot of great tools, and it puts power in the hands of your folks to use tools to create their own little processes, RPAs with Power Automate or other tools. There's a lot of power in having good data, and a lot of empowerment for your workforce and for your company.
All right. Well, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Kenny, and thank you for sitting in today. I hope that you were able to take away a nugget or two. If anybody wants to have any other follow-up discussions with us, we'll be around, and have a great rest of the day.